Next up, we're gonna do Representative Landry while we still on guns, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. If you don't mind, you are the Speaker Pro Tem. Thank you. No, we still got one left in the holster. I've been waiting to use that one all day. Two left? Oh, man. See, I've never had any training. Who else is in? Where's Hollis? I ain't even seen him. Oh, he's in. I'm sorry. Is his quick? Is yours quick? Oh. Representative Landry. Can I? Is his going to be real quick? Can somebody else handle it? Representative Landry and Representative Freeman on House Bill 353.
Okay, ready.
Your bill, ladies.
Thank you. House Bill 353, there's one amendment on it that actually will be a good explanation of the bill because it had the wrong statute number. I don't know if you want to read it in now.
Mr. Gonzalez will read in the amendment. I will offer the amendment and Mr. Gonzalez will read it in.
Members, this is Amendment Set 1831. It's public and available online, and it just makes technical amendments. Changes it from RS 1495.1.4 to RS 14:95.1.5.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll offer that amendment. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. On the amended bill.
Thank you, everyone. So this amendment actually explains what this bill is about. We have in revised statute 1495.1.4 the illegal transfer of a firearm to a prohibited possessor. So under state and federal law, there are certain people who cannot own a firearm. The list involves, for example, if you go to 95.1, a felony, certain felonies, crimes of violence, any crime defined as a sex offense. We also have, and I don't have the number, people under domestic violence protective order, which this legislature passed several years ago. I believe it also covers people who are under an addiction or other legal infirmities. And so what this additional section does is require that any transfer in the state of a firearm undergo a background check. As y'all know,
Here we go.
Young man in the back, you lean. Yeah.
I hope he can't vote.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my bill is a little different than the ones y'all heard today. We already have many provisions in state and federal law that restrict who can own a gun, and it's mostly related to people who have exhibited tendencies towards violence towards others. And what this would do would just ensure that all gun sales involve a background check. Right now, as y'all all know, you only have to undergo a background check in Louisiana if you buy from a licensed gun dealer. You don't have to go through one if you're buying person to person, which is where most guns are sold. So this would require a background check. It would require the seller and the purchaser to get the check on the purchaser. There are several exceptions, which I know some of y'all are thinking about. If you give a gun to a family member, if you inherit one because someone passed away, if there is if it's necessary to prevent imminent death or bodily harm. None of those things require a background check. This is literally just a sale to a different person. And this is also something that is hugely popular amongst the general public in the entire country. Every single poll run on background checks has like 90% approval of it. The governor in the past has publicly supported it. It literally does not prohibit any ownership. It does not put any requirements. All it does is say you have to go through a 3 to 4 minute background check. That's it. And I also have Rep. Freeman here. She, as y'all know, we've been dealing a lot this year with issues of domestic violence and sexual abuse and sexual assault. And as y'all know, Unfortunately, that escalates too often in Louisiana. We have extremely high rates of domestic violence and death by domestic violence, which is why we have a prohibition under Louisiana law that you cannot own a firearm if you're under a domestic violence protective order. And Rep. Freeman, who's doing a lot this year on sexual assault, is here to speak briefly on that issue.
Rep. Freeman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have co-authored this bill with Representative Landry because I agree with her wholeheartedly that the majority of Americans and the majority of the Louisianans, I see Moms Demand Action and gun sense people in the room with us, know that we need to do something to protect our families and children. Just to give you a statistic that is really important, 82% of all homicides in this state involve a gun compared to 75% nationwide. 68% of women are fatally shot, and this is data from 2015 to 2019 in Louisiana, compared to 59% nationwide, both horrific numbers. This past summer, my cousin was one who was shot fatally in Youngsville, Louisiana by her abuser. So it is really a serious thing, and when people can get a gun through some of these internet sites and not have a background check, it makes it even worse, and we've got to do what we can to protect the women and children of the state. I realize that Orleans and Jefferson are the biggest spots where gun violence does happen, but it happens all over the state. I have no problems with the Second Amendment rights, but I do have a problem with not giving people some background check because we have too many deaths by guns in the state.
Thank you, Representative Freeman.
And I'm sorry, I do have to run back to education.
Okay.
So, thank
Representative
you.
Marcel for a question.
Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Representative Landry, for bringing this bill. I think it's common sense that we check backgrounds when people are going to be responsible owners of guns in the sale of guns and not when it's transferred in your family. And at the proper time, I'd like to move it favorably.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. Representative Gudo for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Landry, how is this going to be enforced and monitored?
The same way it is now.
The honor system?
No. Now, when someone is, for example, arrested for pretty much any crime, if a gun is found on them, it is determined if there's a background check run. I mean, it's the same way. You can't just go open everyone's house, but when someone is either arrested or gets into a circumstance where a gun is found, then the law enforcement would be able to check if a background check was run.
So after the fact, after the crime has been committed, then we'll arrest them and put that charge on them for not having a license?
Well, right. I mean, people break laws all the time, but right now people, if this passes, will know that they have to get a background check.
Well, that's kind of my point. The criminals will have guns and the innocent people always following the laws. I don't see how that's enforceable. I really don't. I mean, if I'm selling a gun to, I know you mentioned family members, but if I'm selling a gun to a friend or something, it's up to him to go register the gun. At that point, I guess they can enforce, upon registering it, but I don't see.
So the penalty is on the seller?
No, I'm asking you. I mean, how's this going to be enforced? Because I don't see people taking the time to go do the right thing as you're asking.
People break
not-
the
they're
law
not
all the
gonna do it.
time,
Right.
and then they get caught. And so that's a deterrent to other people not to break the law.
I respectfully disagree with you. Thank you.
So, Representative Landry, but you did mention there's already a background check for it in stores, correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
your bill will employ the same process if there are sales that are not. You mentioned person to person,
Correct.
online. So just that same process will.
It's. I mean, we already have this law. It's already illegal for many people to own a gun. This just helps, to some effect, be a deterrent.
In any event, someone is arrested and is determined that they didn't have a background check. Where are the penalties? There?
The penalties are on the seller.
Okay,
To try to incentivize the seller to do it, and it is a misdemeanor.
got you. Thank you, Representative Landry. Representative Muscarello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How does a private seller get a background? I don't know. How would I get a background check?
Go to a dealership, and the bill has. Let's see.
Well, so Representative Landry. So my question would be, I want to sell you my gun.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know who would do a background check on you? Like,
On
because I
page
mean, like when I
one.
do car, like some people come and do little notaries at my office. They want to sell a car. I don't guarantee title. I just said I'm
Right.
assuming the title's legit here, but I'm just trying to figure out for purposes of making this transaction occur? How are they? Who does background checks other than private?
Licensed firearms dealer right now. So where I have never purchased a gun, but I know there are legal places to purchase a gun, many of them in Louisiana. And when you go to those places, the licensed dealer has to run the background check, the NCIS check.
Well, I get that for like a public sale. I understand that. But for the private sale, I don't think I could just walk into Academy and say, look, I'm selling my gun to my neighbor. Would you do a background check for me? That's the concern that I have for the bill. I don't see a scenario where there are public entities that would run a background check for you and make that accessible to the general public. I get it if you go to Academy, they're going to do a background check, easy.
Mm-hmm.
But how does a third-party seller have the access to that same function? That's my concern for you, Bill.
My understanding is what happens in 20-something other states. It seems like I'm talking about the opposite states others are today, that the purchasers go to Academy or something like that and request a background check, 3 or 4 minute background check.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Robert.
I just want to make one real quick comment before the next question. I mean, we talk a lot about whether it's qualified immunity or police brutality or gun ownership or everything's about the proverbial bad apples. This would literally only collect people who cannot legally own a gun. If you can legally own a gun, this will not affect you in any way. You will still be able to legally own a gun. If you are prohibited from legally owning a gun, you will not be able to legally own a gun. I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Representative Landry. Vice Chair Bacala.
What is, you don't define transfer in the statute, do you?
Let me look real quick at the end. Yeah, transfer. It's on page 4. It's subsection 6. Transfer means to sell, furnish, give, lend, deliver, or otherwise provide with or without consideration.
All right, so my question is, under this broad definition, if I say, Joe, why don't you come hunting with me? I got a shotgun you can use. And I say, here you go, Joe, you go to the other side of the field. Technically, I've just violated the law by loaning Joe a gun. Well, I think it would,
page
because
3,
I'm lending
line
it to
9
him.
provides that exception. While hunting or trapping is an exception.
On what line? I'm sorry.
Page 3, lines 9 through 11. So,
Well, okay, let's just say we're not going hunting. What if I just want to loan Joe a gun? That is also, I'm not selling it to him, whatever. That would be, I can't loan him a gun. And I know Joe, and I know he's a good guy, but I can't loan him a gun under this statute unless we're going hunting, I guess. Correct?
it says while hunting or trapping, at a competition, at a shooting range, if there's imminent harm. I mean,
Okay, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I get it. Thank you.
You
Thank you,
know.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Vakala. No other questions, Representative Landry. We do have 3 green cards. Laura DeVitt, who's president, would like to speak. Angel Bradford, who's president, would like to speak.
thanks. I'll go sit down so they can use both chairs.
Thank you.
Thank you again for letting me speak. I'm here today to ask you to please vote yes on HB 353, which provides for the background checks on all gun sales. As a mother of 2 kids who attend public school, as a person who enjoys festivals and Mardi Gras, Saints games in the Superdome, including tailgating outside before the games, and who also does mundane things like going to the grocery store and to the movie theater, I want to feel safe doing all of these things here in our state. Background checks keep us safe, and they are overwhelmingly supported by people across the country, including gun owners. 93% of American voters support requiring background checks on all gun sales, and 89% of gun owners. You can't really find much in this world that this many people agree on. Federal law over 2 decades ago created background checks on all sales by licensed dealers. Unfortunately, this left loopholes open for guns sold between regular people who want to sell a gun they own and for sales that originate on the internet or gun shows. HB 353 just expands current law to close these loopholes and ensure that all gun sales come with a background check. Since federal law began requiring these background checks in 1994, over 3.5 million sales to prohibited purchasers have been blocked. This tells us that background checks work and that individuals who should not be purchasing guns make attempts to do so. Logically, these people are also purchasing guns from unlicensed dealers and at gun shows, but in most of those cases, they are not stopped by a background check. This bill would require these purchases include a background check and stop even more prohibited firearm sales, which will increase our safety and also give sellers peace of mind that the gun they sold did not go to someone who should not have a firearm, like an individual with a dangerous and violent background. The law also includes an exception for family members who gift or transfer guns to other family. I know that being part of a hunting family and that owns firearms, that this would be a concern. My dad gave a gun to my brother, his son, but that is an exemption, as Representative Landry discussed.
Landry.
Sorry.
That's sticking. I hope she knows that. Representative Landry.
Representative Landry. Sorry about that. The law is needed to keep us safe and to reduce gun violence in our state, which has the 4th highest rate of gun deaths and the 2nd highest rate of gun homicides in this country. Closing the loopholes and ensuring background checks on all gun sales would make us safer here in Louisiana. Please vote yes on HB 353.
Thank you. Ms. Bradford?
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Angel Bradford. I was just going to say, it's so funny. We're talking about like preventing murder and death, but it's nice to laugh a little. So thank you for that. So volunteer Louisiana chapter of Moms Demand Action. We believe the single most effective thing this committee could recommend as a method to keep firearms out of the hands of individuals who would not pass a background check is to require background checks on all gun sales, including those by unlicensed sellers, which do not currently require a background check. Background checks are the foundation of any gun violence prevention strategy and are the best way to prevent people who are prohibited from possessing, I'm trying to make this 3 minutes, from possessing firearms from obtaining guns. Unfortunately, Louisiana doesn't require a background check on every gun sale, including firearms sold by unlicensed sellers at a gun show or by people offering firearms for sale online. Even worse, this committee is also considering the permitless carry bills today that will eliminate the requirement to have a permit to carry concealed and eliminate the only background check many people may ever get. More than 3.5 million illegal gun sales, including to convicted felons, domestic abusers, and people who have been adjudicated mentally ill, have been stopped by a background check in the last 25 years. That's referenced by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. A recent report by the U.S. Department of Justice Inspector General found that background check denials processed by the FBI have an accuracy rate of 99.8%. Evidence also shows that requiring background checks on all gun sales can help save lives. States that require a background check on all gun sales have homicide rates 10% lower than states without them. Background checks are also associated with decreased rates of suicide and gun trafficking. The fact that Louisiana currently only requires background checks for gun sales from licensed gun dealers makes it easy for criminals and other prohibited people to avoid a background check by purchasing a gun from a person they meet online or at a gun show. No questions asked. Every town released an investigation about firearms offered for sale by unlicensed sellers on the website armslist.com, the self-proclaimed Craigslist.com of guns. Sites like armslist.com allow people to arrange in-person sales which are not covered by background checks. The investigation showed that there is a thriving market for sales that don't require a background check. In Louisiana, there is an average of nearly 7,000 posts for firearms available for sale by unlicensed sellers. Overall, the report found that nearly 1 in 9 prospective buyers were legally prohibited from possessing a firearm. Can you stop?
Man, Angel,
I can't,
I understand, but I'm running this committee now.
I know,
you're gonna have to learn. Listen, you're gonna have to learn how to talk when people are talking behind you. No, I don't think she's doing it on purpose. But this is a small room. Folks are having conversations. I'm the chief in here.
Right.
You are not the chief. All right. I don't think she was being disrespectful. If she was, I would have corrected her for you.
I don't think they're being disrespectful. It's just distracting.
I understand that, but you've been here long enough to know you got to talk through the noise sometimes.
Okay. All right. That rate is 7 times higher than buyers who fail background checks where they are required. I'm just going to skip to the end. The shooter in August 21, 2019, Midland, Odessa, Texas mass shooting provides provides a useful example for why background checks are important. Prior to obtaining the firearm used in that shooting from an unlicensed seller where no background check was required, he had failed a background check at a dealer. Requiring background checks on all firearm sales would have made it more difficult for him to obtain a firearm. Please support public safety and support HB 353.
Thank you, Ms. Bradford. Representative Marino for a question.
I'm going to wait and go back to the author.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll keep you in the queue. Next up, green card. President would like to speak. Kevin Wells Jr. Is Mr. Wells here? Okay. All right, he waves. All right, let's go to the red cards. Everett, present in objection. Thought he was waving. And Joshua Burnhill.
One moment. All right, hello again, everyone. This is Everett Bodion again. I'm an attorney. I'm a concealed handgun permit instructor here in Baton Rouge. And I don't think we actually have to reach the issue of whether or not universal background checks are a good idea to have issues with this bill. I have a bunch of technical problems that came up in my review of it that give me a lot of pause. First of all, I have a small concern about personally identifiable or confidential information on behalf of people who are going through this background check process. I don't know that this adequately protects people's personal confidential information if two private sellers have to go to a background check through a licensed dealer. If that background check fails, whether or not that reveals any information about the buyer. I know that the NICS system, having worked at a gun store before, does not give you a reason why that sale was denied, but still it may be problematic for people who want their personal data protected. But that's not my major problem with it. My major problems I have with this bill are in some of the exceptions. First of all, the definition of a transfer is extraordinarily broad. The definition of a transfer as provided in this bill seems to cover literally any time the gun changes hands, even for a second. And the exceptions don't really seem to provide as much of an exception as the author of the bill seemed to suggest. I'll just kind of go through this in order. The first things first is I think that the transfer between family members needs a definition and is sort of unduly broad. It doesn't specify how immediate the family needs to be. Practically speaking, a lot of people who do illegal transfers between prohibited persons are often related to some degree. Some people have large families. Many criminals get guns from family members already, and this doesn't even address that. I don't know if this would go as far as, third cousins twice removed or any of these distant relatives, and I'd hate to oh, okay. Never mind. That has been addressed. But again, still, when you have to make these arbitrary lines about where family begins and ends, that is a problem for me. But my more serious...
That's your 3 minutes, Everett. Sorry.
Already?
Yep.
My name is Joshua Barnhill, Louisiana Director of Gun Owners of America. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Gun Owners of America, we oppose this bill. We oppose background checks. We believe there are unconstitutional infringements of the rights protected by the Second Amendment. So we do oppose this bill and any state law expansion of background checks for the following reasons. Their background checks are inherent infringements. It's wrong for the government to require background checks before any gun purchase. It's like considering somebody guilty before proven innocent and making them prove that they're worthy to exercise their right. Background checks actually keep law-abiding individuals from buying guns. There was talk about, or the author said, this bill will only affect prohibited persons, but most background check denials, and nearly 95% of denials, are false positives. A large issue, especially in minorities. Minorities are wrongly denied disproportionately to others because they're often denied because their names sound or look similar to names of actual prohibited persons. In fact, these mistakes are often affect certain racial groups more than others. Hispanics are more likely to share names with other Hispanics. The same is true of African Americans.
Background check.
You have a statistic on that?
I have
What's
a
your
link
what's
to
your
it.
quoted source that?
I have John Lott, actually. It's the
John
guy
Lott.
that spoke here.
And he said that that African American names are more likely to be the same name.
Well, that's why you see more this false positive. It seems
Is
to
that where's that state your stat? Not
it's
is
from.
that
I have it from. Well, I don't have it actually on this, but I have a link to his
Okay.
data.
I'd like to see it.
I could provide. Okay. Background checks hurt veterans. Over 250,000 veterans who need help handling their finances were added to NICS, even though their disabilities likely shouldn't preclude gun ownership. Background checks would have to create a gun registry. So requiring background checks for private sales, they cannot effectively be accomplished without creating a gun registry. And gun owners, we stand strongly against any move towards a gun registry. And then finally, background checks don't stop criminals. Evil people are the problem, not gun ownership. Criminals will find ways to get guns through straw purchases or illegal purchases, stealing, and they'll use other weapons for their crimes. So essentially, for all these reasons, gun owners of America and our Louisiana members are opposed to Representative Landry's bill, and I ask this committee members to please vote in opposition to HB 353.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weinberg, I'm asking if the next four, we have to be on the floor in 50 minutes. We have two more bills. I can't require you to waive, but I would kindly ask that you waive. Mike Weinberg, Brandon LaBeouf, please, if you can waive. If not, just come on down.
You convinced me.
Thank you. Noah Salwitz.
Good evening. My name is Brandon LaBeouf. I'm a current and 25-year law enforcement officer. I also own a gun store for the last 8 years. We do probably between 1,500 and 2,500 background checks, transfers per year. So it's something I kind of have an intimate knowledge about. A few kind of key points real quick. A background check is not necessarily 3 to 4 minutes. It may take 3 or 4 minutes to enter the data, but it could be an immediate response. It could be researching, could take 30 minutes, an hour. It could come back as a delay, and it could take up to 3 business days for a response or no response to come back. We saw an increase in delays as well as an increase in the systems down during kind of that summer period of COVID. So there's also technological issues that burdening that system more so could bring. As mentioned earlier, the concept of a transfer is a very wide definition. The simple handing of a firearm can be, and just a quick review of the proposed bill, there's not an allowance even made for me as a gun store owner or potentially an employee, depending how technically you look at the definitions, to hand over a gun for someone to look as a display in a store. Also, as an instructor, there's nothing in there for training. So we spoke a lot about training today. Oftentimes, students will be advised to come and take a class before they purchase a firearm so that they're better educated about that purchase, and we'll allow them to utilize firearms that the instructor has. That is technically legally a transfer under this bill, and that I didn't see an allowance for that as well. Another thing is this: there seems to be this notion that no background check equals crime. And that's not necessarily the case. DOJ tells us as early as 2019, 43% of criminals get their guns on the black market, which means illegal means. We see private transfers all the time. They happen in our parking lot. We provide cameras and lights for Facebook stuff that has nothing to do with guns and, of course, gun transfers. The issue is going to be that criminals are going to find ways to do criminal things because that's kind of what criminals do.
30 seconds.
Thank you. The ability to do private background checks is not going to really do anything to help us with the issues that we're dealing with today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All my points have been made, so I'm going to waive.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We only have one more. Mr. Zelinka, he waives. Thank you. Representative Landry, back to close. Oh, we have a couple questions on closing. Representative Marino was first. But before you close.
Right, before you close. I like background checks. I like the idea of background checks, but my problem with the bill is that it's got a lot of it's very loose in a lot of areas where enforceability is like how would anybody going forward
be able to be prosecuted under this anyway if they said, no, I transferred this gun a year ago. I mean, how do you know when, with all the guns that are there, if they go from one person to another, how would you even be able to show when they did or didn't take place? And
I can put a date on that. You're right. There's no date.
Well, but even if we have a date of when it goes into effect, how does a police officer say, well, if I sold a gun and I didn't have a bill of sale or I didn't require one, and how does law enforcement know whether I had a background check or not? The seller did this or not? I just see there's a lot of problems with even trying to enforce it because of that. I don't know how it wouldn't be, and a lot of the things too, like with the temporary transfers. If you want to sell a gun on consignment I like the idea of background checks, and I've never seen another bill or a law that tries to rein in the private sales. And I appreciate the attempt, but I don't know if I like this, because this is both the seller and the buyer that have to comply, right?
So a few things. So first, it's the violation is only on the seller, not on the buyer.
Okay. So if an individual has a gun, how does law enforcement know if the seller did a background check?
I mean, the same way now. Sorry, there's a lot going on here. Let me backtrack on one other thing you mentioned. I did not just make this up. This exists in several dozen states, so I might not be able to answer every question 100%. My understanding is this does work. This does cut down on about 10% of homicides, I believe is the statistic, which I also do not have, on states that have this, and that it is able to be enforced in the same way that other laws are enforced. Actually, several of the gentlemen earlier have commented, only criminals will have guns. Well, I mean, we have crimes on the law now, and people break the law, and we catch them. And it's, it's to stop them from committing it further and to deter other people from doing so. So, I mean, there is no way to get every illegal gun on the market. There is no way to stop every person from committing a crime, but this will catch some people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Representative Landry. I understand what your intent is for the bill, but with the questions that many of the committee members have, would you be willing to allow me to withdraw my motion and defer your bill, and then kind of work with them to try to get it strengthened so that you could get it out?
Yes, I would like to address the date issue, which actually is not surprising, comes from Rep. Marino.
Okay, I would like to withdraw my motion and make a motion that we defer it.
Voluntarily defer it?
Yes.
All right. Representative Marcel has made a motion to voluntarily defer it, give Rep. Landry some time to work on some of the concerns. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the bill is voluntarily deferred.